Hello, my name is Millie Gormely. I am a certified financial planner with IG Wealth Management here in Ontario, Canada. And my unexpected hobby is I am an actor.
Welcome to Unexpected Hobbies of Financial Advisors, the podcast where we interview fellow financial advisors about their pursuits and pastimes beyond their professional persona, some of which may be surprising to their colleagues and clients. We're interested in what makes them tick and how their unexpected hobbies might or might not relate to their everyday lives. Here's our discussion with this week's guest. Hi, Millie.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us on the Unexpected Hobbies of Financial Advisors podcast.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I think it's a great idea that you guys are doing this, and I'm really happy to be a part of it.
We are really excited you're here. Tell the world what your unexpected hobby is.
Well, I am an actor. I am very involved in local community theater as an actor, as a director, and just in the whole concept of putting on plays for the people.
Is this something that you got into later in life, or has this been ever since you were a 2-year-old, you were just on the stage, total drama queen?
No, well, I've been accused of being a drama queen most of my life. Yeah, so that part is true, but in the formal sense, not so much. I actually came across it. I was kind of at a low point career-wise. I was a receptionist for a property management firm, so answering phone calls about people's busted toilets all day long. So it was not a very fulfilling kind of career situation I was in. So I answered an ad in the newspaper. We had those back in those days. That was putting out a call for open auditions for a local theater group, and anybody could show up. And all you had to do was they would show up. They would hand you a piece of a script to read, and then you would go up and do 30 seconds or a minute of this script that they gave you, and then you go home and then you wait and see what happens. And I wanted to do something. I wanted to do something to shake life up a bit. And so I went to this audition. I was terrified. I thought I was going to throw up when I got on the stage. And my hand is shaking with this script in my hand, but I did it. And I was so proud of myself that I did it, just to go up and do the thing. And to this day, auditions are more frightening to me than performances. Like I still get that nervous energy going. But by the time I got home, there was already a message saying, yeah, we want you. So obviously I did something right. And I've been involved ever since, various groups, various productions for a long time now.
And did you have a life history of doing courageous, put yourself out there kind of things, or is this a new leaf for you when you got the
Well,
urge to do that?
maybe a little bit. I left home when I was 18. I moved away and went to school, and I did not know anybody in my program or in the school or in the city that I went to. So that was kind of a big leap forward for me, and I survived. So I do have kind of a history of feel the fear and do it anyway. So that was just one more thing. And I think sometimes if we are in a place in life where we're not feeling a little bit fearful and we're not feeling a little bit nervous about things that are coming up or that the possibilities that are there in front of us, then perhaps we're stagnating and we need to think about that.
You mentioned that you got this urge while in the receptionist job, and did it work out the way you envisioned? That, hey, I'm going to put myself out there, try something new, and then what was the short-term career impact from that, if there was any?
No short-term career impact from there. I mean, I was doing reception for a few years after that, but I think what it did do was it gave me the confidence to say, "Hey, I did this. I can maybe do that." So when a job opening came up in an industry that I knew nothing about, but I thought it was really interesting, insurance claims adjusting, I applied for it and I was able to charm my way or act my way into convincing the guy that I was worth taking a chance on. And I got hired and I was an insurance claims adjuster for 8 years after that.
Just another audition, right? Get nervous, get out there and make it happen.
Yeah. Yeah, really. And life really is in a lot of ways a series of auditions when it comes right down to it. Anytime we're trying something new, we're putting ourselves out there and we're being vulnerable and saying, I'm not sure if I know how to do this, but I'm gonna try it anyway. It's a really good personal growth opportunity for people.
We ask all the guests about the overlap between their hobby and their profession. And sometimes there is nothing. My hobby is a total diversion. And I don't want to assume or put words in your mouth, but I'm guessing that whole taking a risk, treating it as an audition, is going to have really somewhat natural parallels to working with your firm's clients and finding new ones and keeping the old ones. Is that right, or is that too straightforward connecting the dots?
Maybe a bit too straightforward connecting the dots. I think, yeah, that's a tough one because they are so very different, and I do tend to keep them very separate. I mean, I do have clients that are, in theater, and I know a lot of people, and I've come to work with a lot of people in theater and in music and all those sorts of things because I've been in there doing the things myself. But yeah, the skill sets are different. But at the same time, I think where a lot of the crossover can happen is in marketing. So when I'm looking at, putting myself out there as an advisor, trying to get in front of new clients, the fact that I know what to do in front of a camera and, I know to put that light there and that light back there and that this microphone is going to do this, there's some skills that I've gotten from that have helped me put myself forward in a way that looks professional and looks like I know what I'm talking about.
Since you started into this hobby, has it been something you've been doing consistently, or have there been on seasons and off seasons according to what's going on in your life, or moving, or has it been a steady path, something you've been able to enjoy all this whole time?
Yeah, it's actually been fairly consistent. For the first few years, I was involved with what's called a repertory company. So we would just sort of put on plays, right? And whoever was in the group at the time, they would sort of fit the play to whatever they had available. And then I started working with other theater groups where it was open auditions every time. So you had to, this is the play that we're doing. Now we're going to put out a casting call. Everybody who thinks that they can do one of these parts show up, and we'll pick from you. I've done improv groups. I've done like murder mystery theater plays. Those are fun and exhausting because you've got this. There's a certain amount of scripting that happens. These things need to happen in this order for the story to work. But other than that, you've just got a backstory as to who your character is, and then you just have to go in and be that person. So there's a lot of energetic work that takes place with that, and yeah, it's I've forgotten the question.
Me too, because you give us such good answers, and I'm thinking about what the next interesting thing to ask. If you got a production that you're doing, is that how much of a time commitment? Is that a one weekend thing, or are you going to do
Oh
it for a season, or
God,
does it
no.
depend on how it goes?
Okay, so if you're doing a full-on stage production, in at least in amateur theater, the timeline has to be a lot longer because you're working around people who have other jobs, right? So in professional theater, it's usually about a 6-week rehearsal period. So you've got your script, and at the end of 6 weeks, we're doing this. It's happening. With an amateur production, it tends to be 2 to 3 months. So you'll get your script in January. You'll have a couple of read-throughs, and then you start rehearsing with everyone. And probably you'll put the show on first week or so of March. And in the meantime, there's all costume fittings, and let's figure out all the blocking and then all those kinds of things. So it takes a lot longer for a full-on stage production. One really interesting project that I've been involved with almost since it started has been called a 10 by 10. So that's something that was actually originated in my area. So a couple local people came up with the concept, or that's my understanding anyway. And so the idea is that it gives local playwrights an opportunity to get their stuff out there. So you submit a script that's 10 minutes long, and you figure out how many pages that is for what you're trying to do, and they submit these blind. They are judged, and once they've sorted through them all, they pick 10 of them. Then the company will arrange for auditions. They'll arrange for directors, and the auditions are open. So you come in, you have no idea what play you'll end up with. You have no idea what the scripts are because they're all brand new scripts. So you walk into the room, you're auditioning for 10 directors, and some of them you may have met before, some of them not. And then at the end, you get cast, or they fight over you, or they fight not to get you, or whatever, depending on what the needs are for their particular script. So I've been lucky enough to be cast in almost every one that I've auditioned for. So and it's only 10 minutes long. So those take about 4 weeks to put together. Once the actors have their scripts, then they put on a showcase over a weekend. So you run it 3-4 times, depending on ticket sales, and they just run them one by one. So 10 plays, 10 minutes long. away you go. It's a fantastic concept, and I think it's a great way to get new people into community theater because the time commitment is a lot lower and the pressure is a lot less.
And did I hear you say that you sometimes sit on the director's side as well?
I have done. I've directed 10 by 10, and I've also directed a full stage production with Cambrian Players. That's the one of the local theater groups that I've been involved in over the years. That was a lot of work. The actors show up probably about a third or maybe even halfway through the actual production process, because prior to that there's picking the script, and there's making sure that you've got a set in place, and then there's casting your actors and going through the thing line by line and saying, okay, how do I want this to look on stage? That is an enormous amount of work, and that's why I've only done it once. But it's fascinating to see how, as a director, you've got the opportunity to mold what goes on the stage. As an actor, you do too, but it's more about how you react to other people. So when you're on the stage with someone else and you've got a good energy going, you've got a good flow going, then you can sort of direct how things go. But as a director, you've got the bigger picture in mind all the time, and you're the one who's in charge of making that work.
For you, this is a hobby. Is that also the case with a lot of the people that are in the company or auditioning with you, or are there folks that are trying to do this as a main gig?
There are people who are trying to make this their real job, and there are people that were doing this as their real job maybe years ago, and they've stuck with community theater as a way to just kind of keep their hand in and kind of keep going. So you get skill levels all across the board in community productions, right from 16-year-olds trying to break into Hollywood, down to 60-year-olds who used to trod the boards, as they say back in the day, but now they're retired and they just still want to be a part of it because you've got that level of excitement. It's just a lot of fun, and you make such good friendships, and you have these intense relationships for a very short period of time, and then everyone's off to the next project. So it's very exciting, lots of adrenaline happening all the time.
Are you in a large enough community that you're constantly meeting new people, or are there a whole lot of familiar faces because you're
Well,
friends with the people you keep
yeah,
working with?
yeah, you definitely get, and certainly at the sort of main stage level production for some of the more established theater groups, you do tend to see the same faces over and over again for sure. But that's one of the things I love about the 10 by 10 is because it encourages people who might not otherwise have had the guts to show up for a full on audition to do, well, this is not so big a deal. I can do this. And so that's, that way, once you get someone in, once they get bitten by the theater bug, you've got fresh meat and they're yours for life.
My wife has told me you need to take an acting class. You need to learn how to behave like a human, Joshua. And now that I know that that's a possibility.
I don't know that they teach you how to behave like a human in acting classes. If anything, they teach you to get out of your human skin and into whatever else decides, the script calls for or the improv moment calls for. To be honest, I'm not very good at improv. I'm not as comfortable with it. I like having the script. This is what's supposed to happen. And then I can work within that to sort of play with the nuances of the character and do different things or whatever. But there are a lot of people out there who just love okay, here's a scene, here's a set, here's an object, go. And then they'll do some amazing things on stage. But that's not me personally. I love watching it, but yeah, it's hard work to be a part of that because I'm such a controlled person most of the time, and I do live by rules as we do in our jobs, right? So there's pretty,
We do, yes.
yeah, no, there's pretty clear parameters that we work within as financial advisors, and so to just suddenly throw all that idea away and go be a bird is hard for me.
So, is there looking back over the couple of decades plus of doing this, any special significant moment or memory that you remember as being something that you really treasure from this hobby of yours?
You know what? That's so hard to say because I'm one of these actors that basically forgets everything I was ever in as soon as I'm done with it. So I knew you were going to ask that question, and I had to think about that this morning. Like I have a box with all my old scripts in it. That's the one thing I always make sure that I keep. And so you just toss the script in the box and whatever. But I've enjoyed doing ones where I need to do accents. I'm not particularly good at it, but it's fun. So a few years ago, I did a play where I was an Italian principessa, And I got to yell a lot because my husband was cheating on me. How dare he? And it was, that's a hoot. And then the 10 by 10 I just did a couple of weeks ago, I was Irish. And we opened up the set with the lights come up and I'm peeling a potato, don't you know? Like that. I mean, it just challenges a whole different part of your brain. And so those tend to be a lot of fun. But yeah, memorable is not necessarily the word because I can honestly tell you, I've run into people, we've talked and we know each other from theater, but they're like, yeah, we worked together like 5 years ago and we spent, 6 weeks in each other's pockets. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess we did.
You were wearing a costume, right? You look different now.
Well, that is a little bit of something too. I mean, a lot of the plays at community theater level, you're not necessarily going full on costumes. You do end up wearing a lot of your own clothes. And there's been outfits that I've worn as costumes that I had to get rid of after the play was over because it's just I can't wear this anymore. This is Sasha. This isn't me anymore. And every time I put this on, I have to be this person. And just I had to get rid of the dress. It was weird.
Sasha would never be seen at McDonald's.
Oh,
I can't wear this.
no.
So then turning to the overlap of your profession and your hobby, have you had the opportunity to the people that you work with, you've become friends with, is there an opportunity to introduce them to the world of financial planning and all the benefits that we can provide? Or is it strictly kept separate and the two shall not cross?
Well, yeah, sort of. Like I don't want to be one of these people who shows up to a community event or as a volunteer with the intent of I'm going here to get clients. Because that's one of the things that they used to teach us when they did marketing back in the old days. I know it's a lot different now. We're actually building relationships with our clients, and we're building relationships with people as friends. And I want to do that. That's something that's really important to me. But I'm not going to join an organization to do something that I'm interested in with the purpose of using it as a place to recruit clients. Having said that, I have begun working with a lot of people that I've met at various, artistic things that I do, just because they do find out what you do eventually. And especially when you show up late to a rehearsal because you had a client meeting. And what were you doing? I had a meeting with a client. Client, what do you do? And there you go, right? But yeah,
Yeah.
it's not something like some people join Rotary because they think it's going to help them get clients, and that's not why I do theater.
Your Lady Macbeth was amazing, but how many leads did you get?
Right? They are two very different things. And we should, as financial advisors, self-employed or not, be allowed to have lives outside of work. Like this, which is one reason I love the concept of this podcast that you guys are doing, just because sometimes I think we get so over-focused in being advisors and continuing education and making sure that we are up to speed on everything and tax laws and blah, 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 that we tend to become a little one-dimensional. And it's so good for us to have dimensions in our personalities and in our lives that have absolutely nothing to do with what we do for a living.
I mentioned Macbeth, and you talked about your 10 by 10s. Is there a particular stream of the theater world that you lean towards, or do you do Shakespeare or comedy or musical, or is it just whatever comes across your plate?
I've never actually done like full on Shakespeare, like because those are a lot of work. So those are, yeah, that's not something I've got a lot of experience with. I tend to do a lot of fairly, broad comedies and that kind of thing, but I have also had the opportunity to do some really dark plays as well. There was one a few years ago where I played a woman who was going to a cabin with her husband, and her ex-lover shows up. Lots of yelling and screaming, lots of thunderstorms and dark lighting, and in the end, she chops him up with an axe.
Oh,
Yeah.
So a family
Oh,
show.
very family friendly. Yeah. So it was sometimes these really dark things, it's not great for you mentally because you're that person the whole time you're in the script, right? So that person is kind of lurking in the back of your mind for that whole time that you're doing the thing. And this person was not a good person. She was a terrible human being, and she chopped up a man with an axe. Like it's
but just once.
just the one time.
So
Yeah. No,
so
except there
then
were 8
running
shows, so I did it 8 times.
but only 3 times in a day.
Serial killer.
Yeah, exactly.
So then, running the street the other direction, are you able to cultivate your relationships at work? I have clients of the firm or colleagues say, "Hey, come see my show this weekend. I'm going to dismember somebody." Is that something that you get to do, or you try to keep them separate?
I do let people know when things are happening. I mean, I'll put it out on Facebook or whatever, and I don't make a huge deal of please come see me do my thing, because to be honest, sometimes it's uncomfortable when you know that there's someone that you know in the audience. I do have to say though, my regional director, she has been just wonderful. Like every time I'm in something, she absolutely wants to come see it. So that's it's nice to get that affirmation. But I'm just as happy. I'm not necessarily about, this is going to sound pretentious, but I'm not necessarily about the applause. It's nice when people come, and it's wonderful to do these things in front of a live audience to get that energy back and forth and to get that feeling in the room. Like when you're doing a big speech and it's a big dramatic thing and you can hear a pin drop throughout the whole theater, that's a pretty cool moment. Or when you're doing something funny and the whole place is laughing, that's awesome. It's a really, really good feeling. But to me, it's not about that. It's about just doing the work itself and just going through and being this person for a while and exploring what it means to be that person. And that's where the joy is in it for me. It's just doing the work.
Do you prefer musical or play?
I'm probably better at just play. I can sing. I can croak my way through a chorus decently well, but I've got a better ear than I have a voice, right? So I'm not a hugely strong singer. The one problem I have with musicals is that I can't dance. Oh my God, I cannot dance. So actually earlier this year, one of the local theater companies decided to do Chicago. And Chicago, if you guys don't know, is kind of the pinnacle of musical theater, community theater. Everybody wants to do Chicago. There's so many great parts in there, and it's such a fantastic story, and it's so much fun. Great music, wonderful stuff. So I had to audition. I would have regretted it if I hadn't auditioned. I knew I didn't have much of a chance because I know some of the other people who were going to be coming out for that, and it's like, okay, well, if they've got her, they don't need me. But I went anyway. And the singing went okay. The acting part was fine. I know how to read a script. I did that very well. But the dancing, my God. So they lined up about 12 of us at a time, and they put this impossibly young, impossibly skinny professional dancer in front of us that they had imported from another city. And she was going to lead us in this routine. Okay, so now you do this and up and down and twirl and left and right and stop. I'm like, okay, I think I could do this. That's the first part. Now we're going to do this and this and this and this and twirl and dance. And I couldn't keep up. It was tragic. I was the fat old lady in the corner of the aerobics class that nobody wanted to look at because they felt sorry for her. So it was just, oh, I'm never going to live that down. And no, I did not get a part in Chicago.
It's been 20 years since I've seen it, but there's the Catherine Zeta-Jones number where she runs through like 25 different things in a row,
Yes,
disjointed, but
that's what it felt
fluid. And
like.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sort of dismayed that you've brought up Chicago because it's so catchy and hooky, and now I'm going to have Mr. Cellophane stuck in my head until Sunday. But so thank you for that.
And you're very welcome. I don't mind. Yeah, that's one of those shows that everyone would love to be a part of. I wanted to be Mama Morton. I would have had so much fun doing that, but I can't dance, so that's the end of that.
Is it the end of that? I mean, the neat thing about theater is you can get into kind of your comfort zone and stay there, but there's also ways to get outside of your comfort zone. Where do you fall in the scheme of things?
Well, I'm absolutely willing to try new things, but I think with age and experience comes a certain realization of what's worth spending your time on and what's worth putting energy into. And
Hmm.
that goes professionally as well as personally. At this age and stage of my life, it is not worth the amount of energy and time and stress and tears that it would take to make me a competent dancer. I don't care about it enough to put that kind of energy into it. So I'm closing the door on that. I don't dance. If that means I don't get a part in a musical, then so be it. There's other things I can do.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm as coordinated as I'm ever going to be, and I know about as much about estate planning as I'm ever going to know. Just leave that to the people that love
Exactly.
that.
I don't do tax returns. I am not an accountant. I don't prepare wills. I am not a lawyer. There are other people who do these sorts of things. That's what they're there for.
So if somebody's been listening to you speak about this and thinking, this might be, it's not too late for me. I want to try this. What's the best way to, what would you say to somebody who is thinking about getting into acting in community theater as a hobby or a second act?
Yeah, I would explore in your community for amateur theater groups. A lot of amateur groups have Facebook pages, that kind of thing, and just basically Google community theater near me, and you're going to get a whole bunch of information as to what's around. Um, I don't wanna say most groups will work sort of through a season, but a lot will, where they'll say, "Okay, September is gonna be the fall show, and then January starts the spring show," and they kinda go through it that way. There's improv groups that are always looking for participants, so you can either just come to the show one night, or you can sign up, to join the group. It's probably best to just go to a show one night and kinda get a feel for it.
Yeah, fresh meat, you said, right?
Fresh meat for the grinder. Professional theaters will often offer classes, more so for kids, but sometimes for adults as well, so that it gives you an opportunity to get a skill or two and get a sense of what it would be like, and get a feel for whether or not it's something that appeals to you. But yeah, it's out there. There are lots of opportunities if you're willing to put yourself out there. And if you're someone who's not necessarily a stage person, they don't necessarily want to be that guy up on the stage. There are so many wonderful opportunities backstage that people can get into as well. So, being part of the lighting crew, or being part of the sound crew, or being part of the people who build the sets. One of the best actors we have in this town is also a master carpenter, and he builds sets for everybody. And it's just, to have those skill sets in community theater is completely invaluable. It's wonderful.
That's how Harrison Ford got his start, as being a carpenter. And then
Yeah.
as a career changer, when I first started to get into financial planning, one of the first things that somebody said to me was, have you heard of Michael Kitces? You need to read his stuff. And so I was reading his stuff and listening to his podcasts. And then after a couple of years of that, he mentioned that how when he was in college, he was a theater major working behind the scenes doing the set construction and tech stuff.
Yeah.
And look where that led him.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, theater is one of those character building kind of exercises. You have to learn how to get along with a lot of other people, many of whom you might not have a lot in common with. There's a lot of big personalities in theater, and sometimes they can grate on each other. So it forces you to learn how to get along with people, and that's never a bad skill to have.
All right, so Joshua may not know this. So in high school, I was the scarecrow for our high school production of Wizard of Oz.
Awesome.
And
I thought you were
I
going to say
loved it.
Batman.
And I was not Batman.
I mean, the scarecrow. I was the scarecrow.
Oh no, Wizard of Oz. So it was so much fun, and I had so much fun. And there's times where it's like, boy, it would be fun to go back and do a show and I haven't been on stage in 20 years. Now I don't have stage fright. I'm a musician. I play guitar, and I'm comfortable on a stage, but in a theater setting, I've thought about just about the time that I what, I should look into this. Like, a voice in my head says, what, people that are doing that, everybody knows everybody. You're not gonna. They don't want you. You haven't been on stage in 20 years. Like, go grab your guitar and sing a song.
You know what?
Am I silly to think that?
Yes, absolutely. In my experience, there is no more welcoming community than the theater community. And let's face it, in high school, that's where all the weird kids went. It was either the theater building or the band room. The creative arts, that's where the people who didn't fit in.
I was in both. I was in both rooms.
Same. So yeah,
Right.
so the people who didn't feel like they fit in with the jocks or the pretty girls or the whatever, they gravitated towards the theater and gravitated towards the band. Like, I was a hardcore band nerd in high school. That's where I met my husband, So, but yeah, that's silly. If there's an opportunity for you and you're interested in doing it, I say go for it, because you will not find that people aren't welcoming. People are very welcoming.
And the scarecrow, that was the If I Only Had a Brain?
Yeah,
Was that it?
yes.
And there was
Yes.
some amount of choreography with that one, right? So
Oh, yeah.
can you dance?
I can be instructed to dance. I don't know.
It's
The nice thing
coachable.
about the scarecrow is because it was so just like the more ridiculous, the better. I can
Yes.
kind of lean into that and be like, I'm just going to be silly because that's how the choreography should be. So it worked. Another fun fact. So my wife, we went to different high schools, but in her high school production, she was Dorothy.
Oh,
So, so as it turns out, the Scarecrow and Dorothy do get married and live happily ever after.
it was fate. I love that.
All right. So you mentioned a little bit about if what it takes to succeed and big personalities that can be hard to get along. Is there just a certain type of person that this is not for them, that they would just only experience frustration through the
Mm,
whole audition and performing process?
yeah, that's a tough one. If you're a perfectionist and you want to be in charge all the time, well, then you could be a director. If you're
Yeah.
shy and retiring and you don't want to be on stage, well, there's plenty of work for you to do backstage. So, unless you're a complete, I don't know how much swearing you're allowing on this podcast, but if you're a complete a-hole, then no. Then no, theater is not for you because there's no time to be a jerk, right? There is a group of people getting together for a common goal, and if you make it about you, even as an actor, even as the star, for instance, if you're going on stage and you're acting like a diva, there's no room for that because it is a group effort and it takes everybody doing their job in the right way at the right time to make this work. So you've got to make yourself a part of that bigger thing in order for it to go off.
You do hear in various segments, industries and fields that the misbehavior that people can get away with when they're at the top and when they're at the best and they're essential. But when you're at a community level, you need each other, and nobody's the uh, the best in the world at their game, and so it's a collaborative community effort. That makes a lot of sense. Everybody has to be
Yeah.
on their best behavior.
Yep.
Yeah. So where would somebody go in addition to just going to a Facebook group or a local production? Where would they go to find out more about this hobby and the world of community theater and acting?
Yeah, that would be where it would start, and you're going to find so much out there already that I mean, yes, you can go to your local library if such a thing still exists in your town, and look up ways to get involved. But yeah, just get out there. This is one of the things. Oh, COVID was so hard for the theater community because it isolated us, and the whole thing about putting on a production is getting together and getting in the same room and feeding off of each other's energy. I did a few play readings during COVID on Zoom, and it kind of worked. I mean, it was certainly better than nothing, and it was an opportunity to kind of get together and talk to people and kind of get a sense of that vibe. But really, what it comes down to is that this is about getting together in person, and that's what you have to do to get involved. You've got to get out there and go talk to actual people in actual meet space,
Yeah, it sounds similar to the financial advisory world that we
kind of.
kind of sort of made it work through Zoom, sort of. Some clients better than others, but given the option, maybe not.
Oh, you know what? At the same time, I love working virtually, and I'm building my practice around being an entirely virtual advisor. So go figure,
Okay. Study in contrasts.
right?
Excellent. So then, speaking of building your practice, where should people go to find out more about you, either in the hobby side or the professional side? How can we find more of Millie?
Well, my website is milliegormely.ca, but I'm fairly Googleable. I'm pretty sure that if you Google me, I'm going to be the only one that you find.
Okay. Excellent.
Acting.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on and telling us about your hobby, how you got into it, and what it's meant to you. What else do we have from you, Brian?
I'm sitting here thinking about how fast I can go out and inquire my local theater and see if I can dust off the dance moves from my Scarecrow days and see if there's anything still left in there to do some entertaining. Yeah, now the gears are going. So, all right,
Awesome.
Millie, thank you so much for being our guest today. It was wonderful to talk with you and learn more about your unexpected hobby.
Thanks, Millie.
Thank you.
Unexpected Hobbies of Financial Advisors is brought to you by Fiduciary CFO, forward thinking tax and planning solutions for business owners, like RIA firms and their business owner clientele. The opinions of Brian, Joshua, and their guests are for entertainment purposes and should not be construed as legal, tax, financial, or investment advice. You should know better than to take any of this content seriously. Thanks for being a fan of the show. If you were listening and thought to yourself, hey, I know somebody they need to have on the show, you can do something about that. Go to unexpectedhobbies.com/nominate and tell us who they are and what they do that's so interesting and unexpected. If we agree, we'll send them an invitation and we'll hope they say yes. Now it's unexpectedhobbies.com/nominate.